There is a place in southern India where the stones do not simply stand in silence, but sing. The first time a traveler hears it, they often think the wind is playing tricks, brushing through ancient hallways. Yet, as you step deeper into the ruins of Hampi, the hum becomes intentional, as if the rock itself remembers a melody. The Vijayanagara Empire fell nearly 500 years ago, reduced to shattered temples and sun-bleached boulders. But some fragments of that lost world refused to be silenced entirely. The most haunting of these survivors is not a jewel or a weapon, but a cluster of stone pillars. They stand inside the Vittala Temple, a structure so ornate that time itself seems reluctant to erode it. Light slants through carved mandapas, illuminating the dust that rises from your own footsteps. In the heart of this stone forest, the guide will gesture toward a set of smaller columns arranged like a chorus. When you tap them gently with your palm, a clean musical note hangs in the air, as pure as a struck bell. Tap the next pillar, and a different note resonates, perfectly tuned to the first. The entire cluster constitutes a stone instrument, capable of producing a full scale. This is no accidental echo bouncing off granite walls. How did a civilization in the 15th century carve solid rock into a living orchestra? To understand the enigma, you must first walk through the city that once cradled it. Hampi was the glittering capital of the Vijayanagara kings, a metropolis that dazzled foreign merchants and chroniclers. Persian ambassadors wrote of bazaars overflowing with silk and pearls, of palaces that touched the clouds. Then, in 1565, a confederation of rival sultanates swept through the valley like a dark tide of iron and fire. They smashed every idol, toppled every tower, and left the city a corpse of stone. The empire vanished so completely that jaguars and scrub forest reclaimed the streets for centuries. When British surveyors rediscovered the ruins in the 19th century, they thought they had stumbled upon a myth. Amid the rubble, the Vittala Temple appeared as a ghost, its roof still held up by pillars of astonishing intricacy. The surveyors were not just cartographers, but men hungry for curiosities. They noticed that the temple's columns were not uniform blocks, but composite shafts surrounded by tiny satellite pillars. A soldier leaned against one of these slender columns to steady himself, and a clear ringing tone shot through the hall. The accident ignited an obsession that would consume explorers, archaeologists, and acousticians for the next 2 centuries. Today, the main hall contains 56 of these primary musical pillars, arranged in a precise geometric layout. Each one, when struck with a wooden mallet or a bare hand, unleashes a distinct pitch, from a deep gong to a high tinkle. The bafflement deepens when you examine the stone itself. The pillars are carved from solid granite, one of the densest and most unforgiving materials on the planet. Granite is not known for resonance. It usually offers only a dead, dull thud when tapped. Yet here, the rock sings with the clarity of a metal tuning fork. Modern laser measurements confirm that the columns are monolithic, with no hidden cavities or hollow chambers. There is no softwood insert, no metallic core, no crack that could explain the vibration. The satellite pillars are not just decorative. They are the strings of this stone instrument. A single main column can be encircled by 7 or 8 thinner rods, each rod emitting a different note. The effect is that of a frozen choir waiting for a touch to break their long vigil. Where mainstream science seeks a rational blueprint, only fragments of theory emerge. One hypothesis suggests the pillars were seasoned with herbal oils and resins, altering the internal stress of the rock like a violin varnish. Another proposes that the sculptors selected specific granite boulders with natural fissures that amplified specific frequencies. Engineers have speculated about blending different mineral dusts into the stone matrix to create zones of varying density. The Guild of Vijayanagara stone carvers took their secret acoustics to unmarked graves. The most chilling evidence of this lost knowledge comes not from a successful melody, but from a deliberate act of colonial violence. In the late 19th century, a British officer refused to believe the pillars were solid. Convinced that a concealed mechanism or a cavity produced the music, he ordered 2 of the singing columns cut open. Workmen drove saws and chisels into the ancient stone under the harsh midday sun. What they found was nothing but unbroken, uniform granite from surface to core. There was no secret chamber, no hidden reed, no trick of the light. The officer had silenced the music forever in pursuit of an answer, and the answer was a silent, mocking solidity. Those 2 severed pillars stand today as stumps, mute witnesses to the arrogance of a foreign mind. The rest of the musical pillars continue to ring, but the full scale of the original arrangement is permanently lost. The act raises a darker question that haunts every archaeologist who visits the site. If the secret was so dangerous or sacred that no record was left behind, what else have we erased in our thirst for understanding? Modern acoustic science has tried to replicate the pillars using computer modeling and CNC machining. They can carve granite pillars that produce a note, but they cannot recreate the complex interplay of a cluster that harmonizes perfectly. The problem is not just making a rock ring, but making 7 rocks ring in a coherent chord without any dampening. Some researchers theorize that the pillars were part of a larger vibrational architecture, where the entire temple was an instrument. The dimension of the hall, the thickness of the floor, even the placement of carved deities might have contributed to the acoustic field. Tap 1 pillar, and the sound does not stay trapped. It flows across the stone floor and tickles your shins. This suggests that the builders understood principles of wave propagation that we associate with modern concert halls. Local whispers have long held that the stones were not merely carved, but awoken through ritual. According to a fading oral tradition, the chief sculptor would meditate inside the unfinished temple for 41 days before striking the final chisel. They believed the stone had a dormant voice, and the craft was not about shaping, but about persuasion. Whether you dismiss this as folklore or suspect a deeper truth, the fact remains: we cannot duplicate what their hands achieved. The pillars place a mirror before our technological pride and reflect a blind spot the size of a forgotten empire. We have mapped the human genome and landed probes on asteroids, yet the stone chime of Hampi remains untranslatable. The obsession with the singing stones has never fully faded, but it has changed those who pursue it. Some acousticians describe a vertigo of the soul, a realization that the past was not primitive but simply literate in a language we no longer speak. The custodians of the temple, chiefly local Brahmin families, guard the pillars with a reverence bordering on fear. For the devout, the melody is not a puzzle to be solved, but a remnant of divine craftsmanship, the echo of celestial court musicians. Shortly before dawn, when the first light touches the temple's pyramidal tower, the pillars cool unevenly. At that precise moment, if you listen very closely, you might hear faint pings and groans as the granite adjusts to the day. It is as though the temple itself inhales, and the stones briefly rehearse their silent symphony before the world awakens. But Hampi offers only a circle of granite, a perfect note, and the heavy silence of the tomb. The British officer who ordered the pillars cut open reportedly never spoke of the incident again. His journal pages for those months are mysteriously torn out, leaving only a ragged edge of paper and a single entry before his return to England. It read simply, "The sound was pure, the stones solid. I do not know what I disturbed." That admission of disturbance is perhaps the most honest epitaph for our entire romance with the enigma. Time is the great eraser, but at Hampi it has been forced into a strange compromise. The empire is dust. The kings are nameless to most. The market squares are silent. Yet the music persists, a lingering vibration that didn't get the message that the show was over. Stand among those pillars at dusk, and you will feel the weight of half a millennium leaning against your chest. The sky above the ruins turns the color of burnt copper, and bats pour out of the sanctum in ragged clouds. A tourist might tap a pillar carelessly with a coin, and the pure note will cut through the twilight like a cry. For that instant, the boundary between the living and the dead seems to thin, and the lost city breathes again. We tell ourselves that history is a solved puzzle, that everything can be reverse engineered if we try hard enough. But the singing pillars are a quiet rebuke to that hubris, a reminder that some doors open only inward. Perhaps the greatest secret is not how the stones were tuned, but why we need so desperately to know. The abyss of the past does not stare back at us. It sings, and the tune is both beautiful and unreadable. Every note that rings from the granite is a question whispered by a people who have vanished into the soil. And we, standing in our laboratories with all our instruments, can only echo back, "We do not know." There is a comfort in believing that time reveals all things until you stand at the edge of this musical silence. The last light fails, the pillars stand dark and mute, and you are left with just the memory of a note and the unsettling ancient melody of a mystery that will outlive you.